That's one whole season in the books. 53 games, 12 teams, 1 champion. At the end of the regular season, only half the teams get a chance in the playoffs. These are the teams that either didn't come close or the ones that barely missed their shot. First are the Taxes with the worst record of 1 win and 7 losses. They had only a 1-star offense and a 1-star defense. It was clear halfway through the season that they didn't have a shot at making the playoffs. They instead had a shot at being the first winless team in the league. They went 7 losses in a row before in the final game of the season they were able to beat the next time we'll talk about, the Wasps, where the Taxes won 17-6. Narrowly avoiding 0-8. Next up is the Wasps at 2 wins and 6 losses. Working with a weak 1-star offense and a mediocre 3-star defense, they blasted 2 teams to start the year, allowing 0 points in both games. Unfortunately, the wheels fell off for this team after the strong start, scoring an average of 9.5 points a game. They lost for the rest of the season, nowhere near making the playoffs. Next up are the Raptors with a mid 3-star offense and an atrocious 1-star defense. Lost all 4 games in the first half of the season, allowing an average of 33 points a game. That poor defensive trend continued for the rest of the year, except for 2 games where they held opposing teams to 18 points at most, being able to steal 2 wins against the at the time winless Taxes and unfortunate Gifted. Let's talk about the Gifted. They had a bad 2-star offense but an incredible 5-star defense. It was a bad loadout for the time because it was a cycle of their strong defense getting interceptions followed by the poor offense turning over the football. In the 3 games they won, their defense was able to get 4 interceptions in 1, then 6, and then a perfect 8 interceptions, completely shutting down the Brews. Speaking of the Brews, they had a sluggish 2-star offense and a good 4-star defense. Their defense was impressive throughout the year, only allowing more than 30 points in 2 games against respectable teams that made the playoffs, including offensive leaders in the Cannons and the formidable Starfish. However, their offense held them back, only being able to win games where they could fight to get at least 20 points. They ended the year at 2 wins and 6 losses. Last team who missed the playoffs had a real shot up to the last game of the season. The Warlocks only had a losing record for a single game this season on day 5, at the time being 2-3. But they clawed their way through 2 consecutive wins and found themselves at 4-3. Knocking on the door of the playoffs. The only team standing in the way were the Devils, who were having a great year as well and were in the same spot as the Warlocks at 4-3. In the last game of the season, the Warlocks lost their game against the Starfish, whereas the Devils won their match against the Porks, allowing the Devils to enter the playoffs while the Warlocks find their way to the void of the off-season, ending with a mid-record of 4 wins and 4 losses. The strongest team that missed the playoffs. Now on to the playoffs. It's the divisional round and the undefeated teams Cannons and the Pitbulls get to rest and take on the winners of this round. First game is the ADC Divisional, hosting the Starfish with a good 4-star offense and decent 3-star defense, versus the Porks with an equal 4-star offense but a lesser 2-star defense. As expected, the Porks' defense did struggle to contain the Starfish, allowing them to score 6 touchdowns, scoring 45 points in total. Meanwhile, their own offense could only muster 3 touchdowns, ending with a score of 45-35. Starfish proceed. In the NDC Divisional, we find the Mighty Sailors with an albeit mediocre 3-star offense but a strong 4-star defense, facing off against the Devils with a worthy 4-star offense but a weak 2-star defense. It was a struggle for both teams. The Sailors were only able to score 2 touchdowns for 15 points, but the Devils didn't score a single touchdown. Instead, they attempted a field goal on every drive and were able to make 6 field goals on the day, which had them winning the game 18-15. The divisional round has taken place and we see who will be crowned champion of the conference and make it to the Super Bowl. First game, we have the Starfish with a 4-star offense and 3-star defense taking on the undefeated Cannons with a stat-leading 5-star offense and an equivalent 3-star defense. The Starfish could only put up 1 touchdown but attempted field goals on the other 7 drives. Out of the 7 field goals they made 5, making their points on the day a total of 22. But that was not enough to overcome the Cannons, whose offense put up 4 touchdowns. 2 of them being worth 8 points. Make the score 30-22 in Cannons' favor. They will move on to the Super Bowl and face off whoever wins our next match. The Devils 5-3 Devils versus the undefeated 8-0 Pitbulls. It's no surprise that the great 4-star Pitbull defense would hold back the Devils' 4-star offense, who on average can gain 527 yards per game but was held to only 370 and only scored 2 touchdowns. But the 5-star Pitbull offense was able to score 2 touchdowns as well, on top of making 4 out of 5 field goals, making the final score 26-15. The final game of the season is a matchup we all wanted. The first ever Super Bowl is a historic matchup between 2 undefeated teams. The ADC Cannons versus the NDC Pitbulls. It's fitting that this matchup would be decided by one single point. The Cannons had an unusually low-powered offense in this game, gaining 120 less yards than their average for the year and throwing 2 interceptions, giving the Pitbulls an advantage. One that they would take advantage of. The Pitbulls scored 2 touchdowns and an extra 3 field goals, making the final score 23-22. The Pitbulls are the champions of the first season of the Football Dice League, and the first truly undefeated team in the league. Will any other team be able to accomplish the same achievement? Find out in the next season of Football Dice League. This has been an FDL production.